The MOU between the United States and Iran was always hanging by a thread, frayed, tattered, but still hanging. And now that thread has snapped. So who drew first blood? Well, a lot of people are going to say it's Iran. Others are going to say it's the United States. I don't know. I'm going to lay it all out for you so that you can decide for yourself who is responsible for this seemingly irrevocable killing of the MOU. Well, to begin with, what triggered this escalation that we have been seeing for the past day or so has been that in the past 2 or 3 days, Iran fired on several commercial tankers that were transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's argument that they were using the US-designated Omani route, which basically required these commercial ships to turn on their transponders, hug the coast of Oman, and get into the Sea of Oman. And Iran calls this a violation of the MOU. We'll talk about that later. But because Iran fired on those ships, the United States responded with overwhelming force. This was not the kind of stuff that we saw prior to this. Even during the pendency of this MOU, even after it had been signed, there were some back and forth attacks like this, but they didn't escalate. But this time around, the United States came back with, as President Trump says, 20 times greater force. The United States CENTCOM says that they struck 80 sites in Iran at that time, predominantly in Bushehr and Bandar Abbas. And they claimed that radar installations were taken out, air defense systems were taken out, but along with that, they said that 60 Iranian speedboats were also taken out. Now, those speedboats have an average of 2 to 3 people on board each speedboat. So do the math for yourself. If there are an average of 3 people on each speedboat and 60 were taken out, that's 180 IRGC sailors who are no longer with us anymore. Iran has announced that 8 IRGC soldiers were killed on the mainland in Bandar Abbas and in Bushehr. But Iran also says they shot down an MQ-9 Reaper drone in Bushehr province as well. And so the United States has not acknowledged that, and they usually don't. Those are $30 million apiece. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Who is responsible? Well, I want to talk about, before we get to that, who was undermining the MOU right after it was signed. Well, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio thought it appropriate to take a tour of the Gulf states, all of whom are uncertain about where they stand in this continuing conflict in the region. So Secretary Marco Rubio swans off, goes and visits a number of countries, including the United Arab Emirates, and basically seemed like he was undermining what his own vice president, J.D. Vance, had accomplished. Okay, well, we can put that aside, but I want to stress on one word here. In Persian, it's called niyat. It means intent, good faith. Who had the right niyat in signing this? A lot of people argued that the United States was gaining absolutely nothing in this MOU, that the cards were all stacked in Iran's favor. Is that why the US signed it? Because they never intended to uphold it anyway? History is going to answer that question. But what I do know is that the one point, clause 1 of the MOU that we went over again and again, Iran has consistently maintained that Lebanon is an intrinsic part of any MOU, any ceasefire agreement. From day one, no matter what pressure has been applied, Iran has not backed down from that. And it's in the MOU as well. Clause 1, Lebanon. Instead, the United States deemed it appropriate to get the Lebanese government of Joseph Aoun and Israel together for peace talks. And in that agreement that was signed between the Lebanese government and Israel, basically, the Israeli Defense Forces were not required to leave southern Lebanon. That agreement in and of itself didn't directly violate the MOU because there was no condition there that the Lebanese government cannot talk to the United States. But again, it goes back to the matter of niyat, intent, good faith, to try and cut the Hezbollah out of this agreement, where the Hezbollah are Lebanese citizens. they are predominantly living in the south of Lebanon, the actual area which is currently under Israeli occupation. More than 4,000 Lebanese citizens have died. Iran drew the firm red line when it came to the southern suburb of Beirut, which they said, Israel goes in there one more time, all bets are off. So Israel backed down on that, but continued their operations in southern Lebanon, even after the agreement with the Lebanese government, to the point where the Lebanese president, Joseph Aoun, who signed that agreement on behalf of Lebanon, has been reduced to asking United States and other international players and to force Israel to comply with the agreement that they reached between those two. Iran has nothing to do with that. So even the Lebanese government is realizing that it was not a singularly good idea to trust the United States and Israel on the withdrawal of Israeli forces from southern Lebanon. In fact, the Israeli government has become even more aggressive. And even as I speak, an entire town in the Marjayun area of South Lebanon has been bombed by Israel. They have killed more than a dozen people in the southern Lebanon city of Nabatea. Tyre has been besieged, and Israel is showing no signs that it's going anywhere. Okay, so that's clause 1 of the MOU that was deliberately undermined by signing this agreement between the Lebanese government and Israel. That's my first charge. My second charge is, well, actually it was Marco Rubio who was my first charge. My second argument is Lebanon, and my third argument is the Strait of Hormuz, which is where this current flashpoint or clash occurred. Israel fired on ships. Everyone is like, Iran fired on 3 to 5 ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Let's take one step back. The MOU said, and I'm going to read this for you because it is critically important. Clause number 5. Upon the signing of this MOU, the Islamic Republic of Iran will make arrangements using its best efforts for the safe passage of commercial vessels with no charge for 60 days only, from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman, and vice versa. The traffic of commercial vessels will immediately start, and considering the need for removing the technical and military obstacles and demining by the Islamic Republic will be instated within 30 days. Let's translate that. It's in English, right? It's diplomatic legalese. Basically, Iran is saying it's going to do its best to arrange a safe passage of commercial vessels with no charge, because that has been one of the main issues over here, for 60 days. And it said that in 30 days, they will remove the technical military obstacles, and demining will be done within 30 days. So basically, Iran is saying for 30 days, you're going to have to follow our rules on this. The second part of Clause 5 says that Iran will conduct dialogue with the Sultanate of Oman to define the future administration and maritime services in the Strait of Hormuz in discussion with other Persian Gulf littoral states in line with the applicable international law and sovereign rights of coastal states of the Strait of Hormuz. Basically, in very simple terminology, what Iran is, I think, saying over here, give us 30 days to clear up the Strait of Hormuz, so coordinate with us when you're transiting it, because we have mines out there, all right? And then they're saying, and that's 30 days. And in the 60 days, we are not going to be charging, so that includes the 30 days, we are not going to be charging any tolls, but give us time to talk to Oman, and we will then decide what kind of arrangement we are going to set up over there. So 60 days of no tolls, no fees, and Iran's request that for 30 days, follow the routes that we are going to tell you, because we are going to be cleaning up the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I don't know why the United States felt compelled to use the Omani route for transiting ships out of the Strait of Hormuz and into the Sea of Oman, and then into the Arabian Sea. What was the point? Coordinate with Iran and what they call the Persian Gulf Authority. You don't have to pay any fee. You just let them know that you're going to be transiting. You transit on the Irani side, which is what Iran is saying is a way to go. Is this a matter of ego? Is Trump basically trying to suggest that no, we will transverse the Strait of Hormuz any which way we want? Well, what if a ship actually hits a mine or gets into trouble or runs aground? Who is going to pay for the cleanup of a potential oil spill? Okay, who has guaranteed safe passage? Iran. For 30 days, Iran is responsible for the safe passage of commercial vessels, following their rules. 30 days you couldn't wait? Oh, forget 30 days. You couldn't wait for Iran to complete the funeral proceedings of their late leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei? The night that this all started, Iran's political leadership was in Najaf, heading on to Karbala. Both these cities are in Iraq. And they were there for people to attend the funeral, for mourners to be part of that. And Iranian President Pezeshkian had to leave the proceedings and rush back to Tehran to deal with the crisis, because the United States decided that it was entirely appropriate to target 80 sites in Iran, predominantly in Bandar Abbas and in Bushehr. Iran also claims that it shot down a Reaper MQ-9 Reaper drone in Bushehr, but also Iran has today announced that it has lost 8 IRGC soldiers in these attacks in these two cities on the Iranian mainland. And in those 80 strikes were included 60 IRGC fast boats. That is from CENTCOM. So what they're basically saying is that they took out 60 IRGC fast boats, and if you average it out to 2 to 3 IRGC men on each boat, you do the math. Anywhere between 120 to 180 IRGC men may have been killed in the attack on those fast boats. Iran hasn't made any announcement on that as yet. And of course, another ceasefire violation that the United States decided to implement immediately, or MOU violation rather, which was that they immediately removed the waivers that were applied on the sanctions for Iran selling its oil. If you remember, the US had established a blockade, and Iran was not allowed to ship out any of its oil, nor were they getting anything into Iranian ports. Well, the snapback mechanism that Iran has repeatedly raised as a weapon that the West uses when they want to apply pressure to Iran is that they agree to something, and then whenever they want, they snap back and remove that. And Iran has consistently said this snapback mechanism has to stop. And that's exactly what the US administration has done, that along with the strikes on Iran's coast, they have gone ahead and absolutely gotten rid of the waiver. So Iran is, again, no longer able to openly and freely transit the Strait of Hormuz to sell its oil. So is the Strait of Hormuz now open? I don't know. Iran hasn't said it's closed, but they can't use it because the waivers have been removed. So I would suspect that nobody else will be allowed to use it anyway. And U.S. Secretary of War, or whatever he wants to call himself, Pete Hegseth, said that we're reconsidering the blockade. Did any of this help earlier? Go back to before the signing of the MOU. Did the blockade help? Were you able to safely get ships out of the Strait of Hormuz? And you know what? I am kind of exhausted with everyone focusing on the Strait of Hormuz because it suits their interests. Okay, fair enough. Everybody is going to look out for their interests. The Strait of Hormuz is the gateway to 1/5 of the world's oil supply, right? Well, it didn't work earlier. It's not going to work now. The Strait of Hormuz was fine on February 27th, before the United States and Israel decided that they were going to launch this war on not just Iran, but the entire region, the entire world economy. Where do we go from here? Not good places, because President Trump, while he was attending a NATO summit in Ankara, when this whole war reignited, had this to say about the Iranian leadership and the Iranian people.
We attacked very powerfully last night. Very dangerous people from Iran. They're sick. There's something wrong with them. We say, go and do your funeral stuff. And instead of that, they start shooting rockets at ships yesterday. And so we hit them very hard last night. Very hard. I would say 20 to 1, 20 times tougher. And they're a bunch of scum. You want to know that they're scum. And so we don't like them. I don't like them. And they're evil people, and it's the denuclearization of Iran. We're going to denuke it. We're not going to let them because they're crazy. And they can't have a nuclear weapon.
So that was U.S. President Donald Trump, basically using language that he has used before, which infuriates the Iranian leadership. And once again, it has annoyed the Iranian leadership no end. And so Foreign Minister Arachi comes up with this statement on X. Addressing the civilized and courageous nation of Iran with derogatory language does not diminish its greatness. Iranians are known for their civility, culture, and strong moral values. We do not answer vulgarity with vulgarity, but with action, fearlessly and with great valor. And earlier, Chief Negotiator Dr. Ghalibaf said, major MOU violations by the U.S., violating Iranian adjustments in the Straits, persistent threats of further strikes, reinstating oil sanctions, attacks on southern Iran continued, Zionist aggression on Iran. The era of bullying and extortion is over. It leads nowhere. We don't fold. I don't know if anybody really thinks that this is rhetoric and that we should take President Trump's words as rhetoric and Iranian leadership's words as rhetoric. What we do need to keep in mind is that Iran has a political leadership that speaks out with considerable reserve, I would say. I mean, they have not matched President Trump's words like they're liars and they're cuckoo and they're dangerous sick people. I mean, please. But there is another entire group of people in Iran who are not happy with this MOU to begin with. And I'm not just talking about the IRGC. We, in this program, have previously talked about how the political leadership was criticized for the MOU, and in fact, there were protests in Tehran against the political leadership. And right now, Iran is emotionally charged. The entire world has been watching the funeral of the late leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and his family. And no matter which way you want to spin it, independent reports, independent journalists have reported that there have been millions of people who have turned out in Tehran and in Qom and now in Najaf and Karbala. It's estimated that 2 million in Najaf, up to 3 to 4 million in Karbala. And then the final burial is supposed to take place in Mashhad on Thursday in the midst of a war. And I don't know how much to emphasize that the passion and the rage and the anger of the Iranian people has solidified because of American-Israeli efforts at regime change. They killed their supreme leader, but they actually united the people of Iran around the regime, to the point where I think they have rallied more behind the hardliners than they have against the reformists like President Pezeshkian. And this is something, Trump's language is so disturbing. I mean, we could have taken them out in one afternoon. They're all collected at the funeral. We could have just taken them out. You're talking about bombing a funeral? Seriously? Is that your moral value? I mean, I expect that from Israel, right? Because they do that. They actually kill people at funerals. And there was this great debate about whether Israel was going to attack the funeral. Well, you know what? They one-upped it. They found a way to trigger this war to start again. Okay, I'm not being fair. Israel shooting at those, Iran shooting at those ships was Iran's responsibility, yes. But who told those ships to take the Omani route? You couldn't wait 30 days before you started flexing muscle there? Why do you think they did that? That question has been on my mind. Why take the Omani route, incur Iranian wrath, when you could just as easily take the Iran route? Well, that's because I think the United States and Western powers and maybe Israel don't want Iran to develop any kind of structure, which they did sort of with Oman, because if you recall, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was in Oman, and he signed an agreement with Oman, which was pretty much what Iran and Oman wanted, which was some kind of fee structure and joint patrolling and monitoring and maintenance of the Strait of Hormuz. And Oman was put under extreme pressure, so they started flip-flopping on this. And I think that by forcing the Omani route to be taken by these commercial ships, it was a message to Iran saying, no, you will not get full control of the Strait of Hormuz, with Oman or without Oman. We will decide. And Iran is not willing to back down on that. Right or wrong, that's not for me to say. That's for the Iranian people, the Iranian leadership to say. But the fact of the matter is that niyat, good faith and intent, has been undermined by the United States. And if that wasn't enough, Benjamin Netanyahu announces Iran has chemical weapons with no proof, with no reason, any suspicion, never brought up before.
They definitely have chemical weapons. That I can tell you, and that is another danger that they pose. So you could see that this regime that doesn't care about murdering its own citizens, when they chant death to the United States, that have no compunction about using these weapons if they had them.
So now, instead of focusing on the nuclear dust, the enriched uranium, Netanyahu tosses in yet another card into the pile. Iran has chemical weapons. Seriously? I mean, how much further, Prime Minister Netanyahu, do you want to stir this pot? Because this entire campaign of vilifying Iran has now got to the point where everybody can see through it, except the U.S. administration. And that is really sad to watch. I mean, the U.S. got themselves into this war. We've been through this over and over and over again. The U.S. had this off-ramp through the MOU to get out of this war. They could have negotiated over and over and over again over all the other issues with a full ceasefire in effect, with a free flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, with sanctions relief for Iran. But you know what the U.S. did not comply with? No assets that were frozen by the United States have been released yet. There have been some discussions back and forth about the UAE taking in $3 billion or Qatar or the United or Saudi Arabia offering guarantees or whatever. We haven't actually physically seen Iran receiving any of their frozen assets yet. So what was this MOU for? Strategic reserves of oil running low around the world? Yeah, we know that. President Trump said it himself, that they had 4 weeks of strategic reserves left. I don't feel good about this. I am deeply concerned that this entire situation, the U.S. has not shown honesty. It has not shown integrity. Instead, it has produced vilification and threats that are unacceptable in the civilized world. When President Trump 3 times threatened to annihilate Iran, that's not acceptable language. And at some point, the American people will have to decide what they want for their future. It's as simple as that. They've got the midterms coming up. They're going to have to decide. In the meantime, several countries have asked for the MOU to be held up, for everybody to go back to talking. Pakistan has said it. The United Nations has said it. Pakistan, in fact, tweeted. The Foreign Ministry of Pakistan, which has orchestrated this entire MOU, actually tweeted and said that this MOU should be kept alive, on life support, I guess. I don't think so, especially when I know that right now it's coming on to midnight Pakistan time. It will be midnight in Iran soon, and President Trump has promised that there will be another round of attacks tonight. Praying that there's no serious loss of life. but I am not hopeful, and I'm very fearful that this war will continue to escalate via words and missiles and drones. Good night for now.